So, everybody always says we have to get back up, right? We have to get back up. But can we be honest, y'all? This widowed experience is unbelievably hard. And this human experience that we are all living can be unbelievably hard. There can be so much beauty to this life that we have the opportunity to lead. But there can also be so much pain. So everybody always says we have to get back up, right? We have to get back up. And we do. We do. But sometimes we got to crawl before we can walk. Sometimes we have to doubt before we can believe. Sometimes we got to want to give up before we can rise up. Sometimes we have to be sobbing uncontrollably on the floor before we can soar. Now, I'm a grown man, and if you know me well, you know that I am comfortable enough in my own skin to admit that I cry. And I can stand here before you all right here, right now, and I can tell you the first time I found myself sobbing uncontrollably on the floor was after my wife died. I would be lying to y'all. The first time I found myself sobbing uncontrollably on the floor was when I was 12 years old. See, my mom got real sick when I was 12, and I didn't know what was wrong with her. The doctors didn't know what was wrong with her. I just remember the bedroom door being shut all the time, and her being like in the bedroom crying and screaming on top of her lungs from pain. And at 12 years old, it started me to have some depression and then some anxiety, and then that turned into social anxiety. And I became a kid at school who would not talk to anybody, and therefore who nobody would talk to. So I can remember being a 12-year-old boy on my bedroom floor sobbing because I had no friends. And a 13-year-old boy then on my bedroom floor sobbing because I was so damn lonely. And a 14-year-old boy on my bedroom floor sobbing because I felt so profoundly unseen. At the age of 15, I began to claw my way out of this a bit. And at the age of 17, that's when I met her, Michelle. I developed the biggest crush of my life. And after having that crush for 2 months, I finally got the courage to ask her out. Now, in truth, I actually had a friend ask her out for me via AOL Instant Messenger. I had game that day. That boy. But for some reason, she said yes. And we dated for a year. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. A year into our high school romance, Michelle broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. We lost all contact for 7 years. 7 years later, I was sitting at my dining room table, answering through emails, and up popped an email from Michelle. Still to that day, she was the only woman I had ever loved. I had a panic attack. I couldn't read the email right away. So I went and I got a glass of water, took a couple of deep breaths, drank the glass of water, and read the email. It turns out she was giving me condolences on my dad who had passed away. She would later admit that she had been Facebook stalking me for a while, and that's how she found out. We spoke for an entire year before we finally saw each other in person. But upon that first visit back together, after nearly 8 years of not seeing each other, we admitted to each other that we had always loved each other and that love had never actually went away. And we started to build a life together. Although this time it wasn't just Michelle and I. Michelle had a 4-year-old daughter, Emma. And I can remember about 6 months before Michelle came to see me in person, we were on the phone one night, and she said, "John, if this is ever going to work between us, you are going to have to love Emma just as much as you love me, if not more." That mission, y'all, was easily accomplished. I had always wanted to be a husband and father, and now I was. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. 2.5 years into our second chance at love, Michelle was diagnosed with one of the most rare and aggressive cancers known to man. And she had that cancer and she battled it for 2.5 years before she passed away. This January will be 9 years since her passing. I can remember at the wake and the funeral, over the course of those 2 days, feeling so much community and so much love and so much support. And that community and that love and that support carried me through those 2 days. But what happened after those 2 days is that everyone began to drift away. Because everyone began to go back to their normal lives. And now this was my normal life. My normal life without her, which was anything but normal. And I once again found myself back on a bedroom floor, sobbing, just like I was when I was a 12-year-old boy, and a 13-year-old boy, and a 14-year-old boy. But this time it was so much worse. This was after the loss of the woman that I loved with all my heart and was supposed to spend the next 50 or 60 years with. There are a million things we can say about grief. But let me say this one. Everybody knows that grief is not linear, right? We all know that. You've heard it. But neither is rebuilding. Rebuilding isn't linear either. For so long, I just held on desperately to survive. Even though I didn't want to survive, I held on desperately to try to figure out how to survive. And then for so long, I just existed. I wasn't living again, but I knew I was surviving. I was going to survive this whether or not I wanted to, but I wasn't living. I was just existing. I was going through the daily motions of life. And then one day, after my first Camp Widow in 2017, I realized that I actually wanted to live again. I wanted to live again. But as I started rebuilding myself and my life, here's one of the things I realized. Step forward, step back. Every time it felt like I took a step forward, it was a step back. Every time I felt like I took 4 steps forward, it was 22 steps back. And there would be these profound moments, where I was like, I think I just laughed again. I think I just laughed again. I laughed. Step forward, step back. And there would be these moments where I had a moment of happiness again. I think I just had a moment of happiness again. What is happening? But it would be step forward, step back. There would be moments where I thought, I think I just felt a moment of peace. Somebody get somebody on the phone. I think I just felt a moment of peace. You step forward, step back. And if the profound grief of losing my wife wasn't enough, and if the struggle of rebuilding wasn't hard enough, the judgment that came from other people made it so much harder. And it wasn't just judgment about this or judgment about that. It was judgment about everything. Judge how I grieve, judge how I try to rebuild. But the judgment I placed upon myself turned out to be so much worse. Looking back, though, I realized something. Even during the moments in which all I wanted to do was quit, like all I wanted to do was desperately quit, I can look back now and I can realize I didn't quit. I rose up even during the moments in which the absolute last thing I wanted to do was rise. I continued to put one foot in front of another, even during the moments in which I had absolutely no idea in which direction I wanted my feet to go. And as I was clawing and fighting and trying to rebuild, something eventually happened. Those moments of progress began to become more permanent. The steps back began to become less frequent. Those moments of hope and peace began to become more profound. But even as that was happening, I still felt alone. Because I felt alone in my pain. And now I was realizing I also feel alone in my progress. I would come to places like Camp Widow, where I've been coming since 2017, and you're going to wait while I take a sip of water. Ever watch anybody give a speech for like 45 minutes without any water? I'm like, that's not it. I would come to Camp Widow and it would be a reprieve from that feeling of loneliness. Because here, I would feel seen. And here, I would feel heard. And here, I would feel like my pain and my effort and my progress were validated and were being respected. But when I would go back home, I would once again feel alone. I would once again feel like nobody sees this. And I would have more and more of those moments. And I was more firm in what was happening now. No, I didn't just have a moment where I felt happy. I just had a day where I felt happy. I just laughed from the gut. That was a laugh from the gut. I can see a future. It may not be clear, but I can actually see a future. I just felt profound peace, and it didn't leave me in 2 minutes. It stayed with me all day. These moments began more profound and more consistent, and I soaked in them more. But every time I would have one, I would look around and I'd say, does nobody see this? Am I the only one who sees this? Who appreciates this? 5 years after my wife died, I was at a karaoke bar with some new friends. And a song came on. I don't remember what the song was. But I remember going to the karaoke bar that night. And something hit me as I was on my way there. I was in the best place I had ever been in terms of the relationship I had with myself. Because for so long, I lived in a sea of self-hatred. And I had rebuilt myself, and I was proud of myself. And I saw a future. Even though I didn't know what it looked like, I saw that there could be a future. So I already walked into that karaoke bar feeling emotional. And a song came on. And I don't remember what song. But I know it hit me here. And these were new friends, and they weren't widow people, so I wasn't about to show my emotion in that moment. So I held back the tears with all my might as the song kept playing. And I had a conversation with Michelle in my head. And I can remember saying to her, baby, can you see this? Baby, can you believe this? And in that moment, I felt so unbelievably connected to her. But if I'm being honest, I also felt so alone. Because as I looked around the room, I realized there was no other living, breathing human bearing witness to this unbelievably profound moment I was having. But I knew that she would be proud of me. I wrote a piece years ago, probably maybe 2 or 3 years after she passed. And it said, I know my deceased spouse understands my pain, but roots for my joy. I never felt guilty or bad or like I was disappointing Michelle during the moments I was on the floor sobbing, during the moments that I wanted to give up. I never felt that. We have to be honest about how difficult this experience is. But I do firmly know that she would be proud of me for not only how far I've come, but for the effort. We can't control the results, but we can control the effort. And I firmly know that she would be cheering me on as I tried to get to a better place and as I eventually got to a better place. So I sat there in that moment, holding back the tears, listening to that song, saying, baby, can you see this? Baby, can you believe this? But I still felt alone. A month later was Father's Day, 2021, 13 years after my dad died. And this was a month before I met my fiance. And the reason why I want to point that out is I think with the people who have found love again, sometimes it's easy to look at us and say, well, you're in a good place because you found love again. Finding love took me to a better place. It took me to a better place. 1 month before I met my fiance, it was Father's Day. And I got a cup of coffee that morning, and I went out to the pool area of the building we lived in. And I became emotional again because I could feel my dad's love. And in my head, I once again said, this time to my dad, I said, Dad, can you see this? Dad, can you believe this? And I was talking about the fact that a grown man, myself, who never ever thought he would have a good day ever again in his entire life, was in such a good place. And in that moment, I felt so connected to him, but I also felt so alone because as I looked around, I realized there was no other living, breathing human who was bearing witness to this moment. I had an inner desire for people to see my pain and for people to see my progress. And the truth is, just as nobody saw me on the floor sobbing or in the shower sobbing, or where else do we tend to sob? In the car, right? Nobody saw this profound progress either. As women people, there are a whole lot of reasons why we can feel unseen. I want to throw a couple at you. And we are going to get inspirational in a few minutes now. First of all, it's a couple's world. And we were a part of a couple, and now we're not. And that alone can make you feel incredibly unseen. Society does not understand grief or rebuilding. That can make us feel unseen. But also, your own personal story can make you feel unseen. So one more sip of water. Let's say you have 50 years. You had 50 years. Some might not see the extent of your pain because why are you crying? You had 50 years. Well, what's not seen is that you don't even remember your life before that person. You don't remember life before your husband or your wife. And my goodness, can we be honest about the fact that gratitude and pain can walk hand in hand? They can walk hand in hand. Let's say you had a short amount of time with your person. You had 8 months with your person or 4 years with your person. Well, come on now. Why are you crying? You didn't have that long with him. Right? I was robbed of my 50 years. And we know in this group that no amount of time you have with your person is ever enough. Caretakers can feel unseen because people think they know what was happening and they know this and they know that. No, come on now. You came over and you saw Michelle for a couple hours and she put on a brave face and that's what you saw. You didn't see every day for 2.5 years the toll it took on her, the toll it took on me. People who lost their person, and if I said spouse or something more, I apologize. Their person suddenly can feel unseen. Because unless that is your story, nobody is going to understand the pain of not being able to say goodbye. People who lost via suicide or addiction, if you had a complicated relationship where there was abuse or infidelity, you can feel unseen because in this society far too often, if you don't have like the perfect little story, Your grief is invalidated. And going back to what I just said, where I corrected myself, if I said spouse, if they weren't your spouse, if they were your fiance or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and you didn't have the piece of paper, unfortunately, we live in a society that can make you feel even more unseen. There is something that I taught myself to do that completely changed the game for me. Some of you have heard this before. This is one of my favorite stories. Mr. Bumpy Moss has heard it like 10 times. But we're going to do it again. If this speaks to your mind or your heart, I want to encourage you to not leave it in this room. I want to encourage you to take it with you and to use it every damn day if you have to. I call it removing myself from the situation. Okay? So here's what I do. I act like Michelle never got sick. Michelle never died. She's good. We have an amazing life. We're on our way to, growing old together. And one morning, I go to the local coffee shop to grab a cup of coffee, and I meet a guy there. We start talking about, the Chicago Bears, because I'm from Chicago, and how bad they always stink. Hopefully one day they'll get good again. Sorry, Bears fans, who might be watching. And we'll call him Joey. His name is Joey, okay? And Joey tells me he's new to the neighborhood, and he really doesn't know anybody. So he asked me if I want to go grab a beer later. So I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go grab a beer. So I go home, and I tell Michelle, I made this new friend, Joey, we're going to go grab a beer later. And she's like, I'm good, you're annoying me later, stay for 2. I'm like, well, let's stay for 3 then. Joke's on you. So I go later that night to meet Joey, and after we make small talk about sports or whatever, Joey starts telling me his story, okay? Joey starts telling me his story. But actually, it's my story. It's my story of falling in love with my dream girl at 17. It's my story of having a year with her before she broke my heart. It's my story of 7 years later reunited. It's my story of pinching myself every damn day because how is this my reality? How are we back together? How do I have this amazing stepchild? How did this happen? I never thought something this amazing would happen. It's my story of building a life together. It's my story of being so profoundly happy I couldn't see straight. That type of happy. And that's my story of how she got sick. Joey's telling me how his wife gets one of the most rare aggressive cancers known to man. And how for 2.5 years, his wife battles that cancer. And he starts telling me every single detail about it, so much so that it's taking an emotional toll on me as I listen. And I'm wondering how this man actually lived this experience. He tells me every single detail about their high school romance and the time apart. He tells me every single detail about their reunion and their adult romance. He tells me every single detail about being a stepdad. He tells me every single detail about her getting sick and 2.5 years of the cancer battle. And everything that happened behind closed doors. Not only with the illness, but the other stuff. People who made it worse. Situations which made the hardest situation in our life so much more difficult. He tells me about his anticipatory grief and what he was going through. And then he tells me that she died. And he tells me about the grief after she died and the sobbing and the secondary loss and the loss of identity and the judgment. He tells me everything. And then he starts to tell me about trying to rebuild. And how even during the moments when all he wanted to do was give up. All he wanted to do was give up. he refused to give up. And he tells me about 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 4 steps forward, 22 steps back. Every single detail that this man is exhausting me, and I'm once again looking at it and thinking, not only when is he going to be done, but if I can't listen to this, how did he live this? Then Joe tells me where he's at right now in terms of rebuilding himself and his life. And then when he's done with all of this, he looks me square in the eye and he says, and I'm going to keep going. I would sit there and the people at the bar would probably think I had like a crush on him because I would be because I would be in awe of this man. I want you to see it. I want you to see what you have been through, not me, what you have been through. I want you to see what you are going through. I want you to see the effort that you have made and continue to make. I want you to see the progress that you've already found. I want you to see it. But I also know that's not always enough because we are human. I'm always teaching y'all. Did you know that? We're human. We're human, always. And here's the truth about being human, or one of them at least. When we came out of our moms, we were programmed to desire family, friends, community, romantic love. And we were programmed to desire being seen by other humans. That is a human desire. So I want you to see it in yourself. I want you to remove yourself from the situation and say, my person is still here and somebody else has my story. What would I think about that? What would I say to them? But I know that you may not be ready to do that yet. So I also want to say this. I see it for you. If you can't see it in yourself, at this moment, I see it for you. You rose up, even during the moments in which the last thing you wanted to do was rise. Yes, you did, and yes, you do. You continue to put one foot in front of another, even during the moments in which you had no idea in which direction you wanted your feet to go. Yes, you did, and yes, you do. But if I'm going to see it in you, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you to open your eyes for me. And I'm going to ask you to see every person who came before you. Every little person who was on the floor sobbing and thought they would never get back up. Every little person who was convinced there would never be a better tomorrow. Every little person who was absolutely convinced that life would never be good again. We didn't think we would smile either again, y'all. I promise you. We didn't think we would live again either, y'all. I promise you. We didn't think we would laugh ever again. I promise you. But here we are living and laughing and smiling. The truth is, I will love my late wife, Michelle, every single day for the rest of my days with my whole heart. And I will miss her every single day for the rest of my days with my whole heart. That hasn't changed and that won't change. But some things, in fact, a lot of things, have changed. So at first, all I had was this cup right here. It was the grief cup. This is all I had in my life was the grief cup. It's all I wanted. It's all I could see. And I was convinced that it was all there would ever be. The grief cup. 9 years later, I have more cups. I have a music inspires me cup. And I have a I love to be in nature cup. And I have a I love Camp Widow cup. And I have made some amazing new friends cup. And by the way, while I take another sip of water, give me a round of applause if you think widowed friends are the best. Let's see what else I got. I had my daughter is the coolest person I know about. And I've been so lucky to find love again cup. I have I love to travel cup. Anybody else? This cup is like soul touching right here. You have to bear with me here for a second. So y'all told me to mess this time. I have a kindness cup. See, my wife was the kindest person I've ever known. And part of the way I carry her legacy forward is to try to be the kindest version of myself that I can possibly be. Now, some of y'all might be listening to that thinking, but the world isn't kind, man. Right. Right. Which is why I made a decision, what do I want to be? If the world is going to be kind, can I even it out with some kindness? If the world is going to be cruel, do I want to add to that cruelness? Or do I want to even out the playing field a little bit? The beauty of kindness will always overpower the smallness of cruelty. You can change another person's moment, day, and even life by being kind. So I have my kindness cup, which is also I treat every person with respect cup, and with dignity cup, and with equality cup. I also have if I'm going to be kind to everybody else cup, I better be kind to myself cup. And I had for the first time in my life, about 2 years after my wife died, I started to make myself a priority in my own life cup. I started to act like I match her cup after a lifetime of neglect. And I have a hope cup, and I have a peace cup. The peace cup fell. That's an interesting point I was going to talk about. Just because you got those cups doesn't mean you don't need to make sure they stay full. The cup can be full, but you better make sure it stays full. I try to be present in every good moment of this life cup. Because I never thought there would be another good moment in this life. So 9 years later, y'all, I got a whole bunch of cups. I'm going to throw them there. I see you. And I want you to see yourself. But I also need you to see those of us that have come before you. I need you to see Greg Mays and Monica Brightwell. I need you to see John Colo and Michelle Hernandez. I need you to see Bobby Moss and Jen Daly. I need you to see Nancy Salzman and Greg Bowman. I need you to see Victor Bruno and Lori, how do you say your last name? Zamansky. I messed it up. That's okay. I need to see Karen Coyle and Shelley Roth and Rose Novenson. I need to see Aaron Henty and Kathy Gleason and Carolyn Bates Jennings. I need to see Kathy Murray. I need you to see all of these people. I could go on and on and on and on, Kelly Lynn. Because I promise you from the depths of my soul when I tell you that if you see us out there and you see us laughing and you see us smiling and you look at us and you think, that will never be me. I promise you we felt the exact same way. And I want to tell you that we all see you. When we look at you, we see ourselves in you. And we know you. Even if we don't know, I'm going to pick these cups up because I think it's more powerful. Even if we don't know your name or your face, we know you right here in our heart. We know you. And we see you. And all I'm asking, even if you're not ready to hear this message today, I understand that, is for you to keep it in the back of your memory bank somewhere. So that when the day comes when you want to start to see yourself, what you've been through, what you're going through, the effort you've made, the progress you have already found, hopefully this message will resonate with you then. We see. And just as we saw you crawling before you could walk, and just as we saw you doubted before you could believe, and just as we saw you wanting to give up because you were so damn tired of having to rise up, y'all, when that magical, incredible, improbable, once thought impossible, undeniably beautiful moment comes where you go from sobbing uncontrollably on the floor to, oh my goodness, oh my gracious, I thought he was crazy and he might just be, but at this point he was right. I too am ready to soar. When that moment comes, we're going to see you then too. Thank you guys, everybody.